Welcome to Friday, listeners. It's the last Friday of May. A big sponsor shout out goes to Tatiana's School of Couture as she launches her online sewing workshops. Use the link on the Daily Series podcast to hop over to Tatiana's website and booking. We've got a special treat for you today. At the New South Wales Australian Sewing Guild Industry Day on Saturday the 14th of March this year, their keynote speaker was Rebecca Ritchie. Now, Rebecca is the head of Wardrobe Opera Australia, and she discussed the processes that the team works through to bring from the initial sketches and designs the magical moments that first appear on stage. So today's recording is the audience view of that for you. In a couple of weeks' time, though, we'll be talking to the New South Wales Industry Day Committee. Enjoy this recording and have a lovely weekend.
Hello, thank you for having me today. It's a great pleasure to be here and share with you what we do in the wardrobe department at Opera Australia. A little bit about my history. I was a home sewer, learned sewing at school, like probably most of you, and went to OA to work on a production just altering op-shop clothes, and that was Baz Luhrmann's Love or When. It was a big breakout production for Opera Australia, and I rode the wave of that. Decided that costume was what I wanted to do, and I came back for 2 weeks' work, and I never left. It's 28 years later. It's been the longest 2 weeks of my life. I was a baby. I was sold as an infant. Yes, that's correct. But it's the largest permanent wardrobe department in Australia. Film companies employ more over short bursts, but we're the largest permanent company. We currently have around 20 productions in the workroom at the moment at varying levels. So at any one time, we're working right across a lot of different productions, from early stages of budgeting right through to putting the performance on tonight. Hopefully next week as well. We'll see how we go. So the way that we start a production is the designs are presented to us. The designer is chosen by the director. We hope that's about 12 months in advance. It's getting shorter and shorter and shorter with people's busy times. We're getting a smaller window in which to do our show. So our scheduling of those productions is very important. We need to know when we're going to be working on all of them so that we can give the attention that they will need. So at the beginning, it would be just the buyer focusing on the production, and then as we move through, the supervisors will pick up on it, then the cutters, then the sewers, then the stage staff. So it has about a 12-month life until it gets on stage. When we're presented with the designs, the first thing we have to do is budget it. It all comes down to money. We're currently in the process of budgeting the ring cycle, which is 4-part opera, the biggest thing you can do in opera, and it's $71,000 over budget. So I've got to find $71,000 in there somehow. That's my job at the moment. Sometimes it's great, and you've got the money there to put the show on stage. For instance, this costume here. This is Leonora from The Force of Destiny. She is a very wealthy member of the Spanish higher households, and her story is that she runs away with her love, doesn't have any money, and it never ends well. But what the director wanted to show at the very beginning of the production was what she gave up, so what she actually left behind, which is why we have this incredibly embroidered costume. And I won't take it off the stand just yet, but I will take it off later because there's many different pieces underneath, and that was part of the scene on stage. She stripped of all the elements on stage, piece by piece, and there's a lot of tricks in there, costume tricks, that you'll see that we utilise to get it in under budget, only make it once, and also make it work on stage. Let's go back to when we start our design. So this is our Nereus over here on the stand. So Aida, you will have heard of that opera by Verdi. Aida is the pharaoh's daughter. The second time she appears on stage is in her bedroom or her area of the palace, so she's much more relaxed. Gianluca is the Italian designer who created this design. So this is what we get. This image here is what we see when it first arrives, and we nut out how we're going to do that. It could have been an embroidered costume, it could have been hand-painted, it could have been fabric that we chose to do this. There's many different options, and we have to work out how we're going to do it. So how do we do it? Well, this base here of this slip is just a white sequin fabric. We just started with a white sequin fabric, and then we created this geometric design. It was cut on a laser cutter, which is a great tool for us for creating designs in-house, and then it was sprayed or art finished. So instead of getting it beaded in India, which is often something we do, and that's what we did here, we sprayed it. It meant that the sequins we could create that really fine triangle point. Any sequin, if you're going to have to go so small, the cost of embroidering that would be insane. But it's theatre. You've got to remember, people are at least, 20, 30 metres away. So it looks like a beaded or a sequined dress in a black and white pattern. In fact, it's just black sprayed onto white. The other thing we want to do when we create a costume is think about how we're going to use it in the future. So we're never putting it on one person only. It's going to have to go on many different people. And for this one, and this is a trick we use a lot, the underskirt is separate. So we've got a black slip underneath. We haven't wasted the fabric, we've just tacked it onto the hem at the bottom. And there's also several tucks in there. So if someone wears it in the future and they're taller, then we can let the hem down, we don't have to worry about it. Or we can shorten it through the underneath layer. That's the other thing. You can often let things in and out, but proportion up and down is quite hard to do in a costume. And that's a trick we've used on this one as well. The hem is so heavily embroidered, you don't want to be tucking up that hem or trying to let it down. It's just not possible. So what we've got under here is a huge tuck that goes all the way around that we can drop up and down for this costume. Now we knew at the beginning that we were going to have two different sopranos in this at least, one quite small and one quite large. So not only is this adjustable through here, but there's also an incredible amount of excess in the waist, big tucks, so that we've spread the size through this, so we can let it in and out. We don't have to make it again. We did make second bodice because that's not so easily. But for the skirt, we only ever make one, and we do all the performances. All right, back to our Neris. So her gown. This was really hard to nut out. This was really hard to work out how we were going to do it because there were so many elements to it, and it was going to be expensive. And we had three different Neris. One that was about my height, one a bit taller, and one 6'2". And we only wanted to make one coat. So it's actually cut for the incredibly tall woman, but because you've got that rounded front edge, when she's wearing it, it kind of just drapes away. So you win some, you lose some. We've got some internal tucks in the sleeves so we can shorten the arms so it's not completely overwhelmed. But as a general thing, it's one size fits all in this one. The fabric started out, the body of the kimono started out, it's shot gold and silver. So this is the fabric here. You can see as it moves that the silver comes into play. And then over the top we have sprayed the silver and the black to create the pious pattern. There's only one seam in the centre back of the body of it. There is through this tucked section here. But generally it's one centre back seam that goes all the way around to the front. So the front is off grain, but you have not then had to seam all the pieces in together. So that's a decision that you make to make sure that the pattern flows through nicely. And where were we going to see most of the pattern? On the back. So that's where we focus our attention on that. Then there is the border edge. So this is a lot of work. This is a lot of time. And often you won't get the soprano until 3 or 4 weeks before the show. So it all has to be done to our like on a stand and decisions made before they arrive. And that's the case with the hem. We had to just go with the length that we wanted, create this border, goes from smaller all the way through, right around the corner, and all the way down to the hem. So we had three different sizes for this scallop pattern here. You can see it changes size just there, and then as it gets to the bottom. So you you're trying to all the time think, what's the most economical way I can do it without overdoing it? Where's the cut-off point? We could have done it absolutely graduated all the way through, but we didn't need to. We realised we can cut it off at 3 different points. So that's our Amneris, and she wears it for all about 10 minutes, but she'll wear it every time we do AIDA. You can see just in the photograph there on the corner, you've got the design and then you've got the pages beside it. When we get the designs, they go straight into what we call the Bible, costume Bible. So this is the Bible for Lava Wen. And in fact, that's the Musetta costume just on the black and silver and gold. And she's in there. The way the Bible pages work is that you have the design, you sit down with the designer, and we pick out the elements. What is it that you want? What's your priority? What do you need? So for here, we've got the sample of the beading, we've got the sample of the fabric at the bottom. We haven't got a sample of the painted fabric, but we've got a sample of the gold and silver shop, because that's how it started. And the Bible's really there for your reference as you're going along. There's going to be a lot of different people working on the costume, so they can always go to the one source that they know, this is what's been chosen for this. But also, if something has to be repeated in the future, all that information is there. Where we got it from, what shoes were bought, where the trim was, how much we bought. We'll often buy, when budgets allow, more than we need, because we'll have to repeat it again. If it's a particular fabric that you come in a dress store and they may not, it's a fashion fabric and they may not have it in, 2 years' time, we'll buy extra. If it's a base solid fabric that's one colour, we'll just buy it out. Because our productions are designed to last 20 years. They don't always last 20 years, and then we've got productions like Chirandot that I think is hit 32 or something. It's been going a long time. And we've had to remake that over the years. There's lots of layers of silk organza kimonos. There's 120 people on stage that tread on each other's costumes, they get ripped. Silk rots, make it again. That's, just the nature of the show. When we do talk about whether we would actually do a polyester version, and we decided against it because of the movement of silk on stage. We chose to do polyester on the children because they're much tougher on their bodies than the performers. So you weigh up all your decisions as you're going along, and after 20 years of doing Chirandot, we thought, how could we do it again better? 20 years is a lot of time of technology and changes in techniques and methods of making costumes. So we have our office or workshop based in Surrey Hills. We have a big building there. We used to store everything there. We're too big now. So when a production is finished, it comes back to the op centre. It gets cleaned, it gets dry cleaned or hand cleaned, packed up, marked off, but it's all stored in big wooden crates, depending on the size of the production, 1 or 2 or 3, and then it's shipped up, goes out to a warehouse, Blacktown, up on a shelf, stored, kept safe.
Would that have to be flat?
No. So there are some elements that the pannier underneath is store flat, and we have boxes for hats and accessories and things like that. This is very robust, this skirt. So no, not this one, but we've got other beaded dresses that yes, we keep flat in boxes. They're a foot longer by the time you roll it out of the box and 3D stuff. We used to store everything, but the fire regulations changed and the sprinklers wouldn't reach the bottom level, and so everything had to be shipped out. So, yeah. But it also means that we didn't lose things. When I first started, things went missing all the time because it was, I just need a good pair of black trousers, go and grab those, and then they're gone. So it's a much better system. We now also RFID tag all the costume pieces so we can scan them in and out. It's rather new, we've only been doing it 18 months and it's still in its trial phase and it's still giving a lot of people a lot of grief, but it does tell us where pieces are. So we've worked through those. We make sure that if the information changes in a fitting, that the Bible's updated because this is the source that we're going to use. So there's a lot of paperwork and giving the production is accurate. Of course, things go wrong, changes happen at the stage. There's no one exact pathway to getting students on stage, and that's part of the joy, I think, of what I do and what my team does, is nutting out those problems, figuring it out, how are we going to do it? How are we going to make this Amneris coat? We could have just sent it off to India and not thought about it, but we didn't want to do that. We have one look at the Musetta costumes, and we go in. This is a production that was done. Oh, one last thing on Amneris. She's got a collar. Now, This is removable because you can't dry clean it. So any sort of heavy jewellery pieces or anything with a lot of extreme detail or embroidery will be something that we make removable because the metal won't last through dry cleaning, would also damage the garment. So it's been taken off at the moment because it's done its season and it will go back on when we come back to redoing this. So then the other things you've got to think about too, how's it going to actually function? How are people going to clean it? How are people going to move in it? What are they going to need each night at the theatre? It's all very well to design something, but if you can't air it out or get it in the size of a hot box, any singer perspires a lot. Yeah. Anything next to the body, so shirts, chemises, like really close to the skin, we'll wash every night. So we have a big team of maintenance people that come in every day and do all the washing. We also think about, they are a sweater. We are going to have to do something about that. So we pre-wash fabrics, particularly for waistcoats and things that are going to absorb a lot of the sweat. We'll make sure that the canvases have been washed, or we'll use a canvas that won't shrink, so that we can actually physically immerse it in water at the theatre without having to send it to the dry cleanser. We call them sweat pads. Some people call them dress protectors. And they go in as a matter of course. It's just protect our costumes. It's quite heavy. The thing with this one, she wore it for her first aria. She wears it from the top of the show and she wears it for about 10 minutes. So we knew that she wasn't wearing it all night. If she was going to wear it all night, it would have been printed or painted or just fabric rather than embroidery. Generally, costumes do end up quite heavy, and the reason for that is that they've got to stand for long, like they've got to last for a long amount of time. So you do need some structure inside, you do need the mountings, you do need heavy finishing so that they can be handled quite strongly and also last that 20 years. Yeah. Actually, I want to just show you, we've got a waistcoat over here and a coat. This is at the first fitting stage. So this is from a production of Don Giovanni. So when we get to first fitting stage, there's still a lot of decisions to be made. Even though you've had the designer might want to see it on the body, change the proportion, look at how it's working. So the revere on the waistcoat here is just a bit of lawn cut out. We haven't decided yet what shape the collar's going to be. So it's really just there as a visual to look at proportion. We haven't put any of the pockets in because the waistcoat length could change. We've left lots of excess in there so that we can play on the body. And you'll see also our side seams and our centre back seam. That's a really chunky seam, but that's what we leave in there. We leave that inside, in the centre back. When you're cutting your arm for the sleeve, you leave it on the sleeve, the back sleeve, and also the excess up into the sleeve head. So inside, our costumes are not very pretty. They do not look like wedding dresses or couture garments. They're very, very clumsy because we need to let it out in the future, and you can't just let it out. That way you'll need the excess up top. So inside is a lot of excess, creates extra weight, but it means that we're not remaking it time and time again. We can actually let it out. Same here on this tail coat. So the top collar hasn't been finished off yet, they've just cut it in the canvas. So they can see, in case they've got to change the shoulder line in the fitting, the really important things in men's tailoring to get right is the balance on the waist and the fit on the shoulder. And that's, so very often in a fitting, you put this on, the first thing we'll do is rip off the collar because it's not fitting very well and adjust the shoulder line. The sleeve will come out and everything gets balanced from the shoulder and from the waist. Then you go back and you redo that. So you don't want to put your time and energy into finishing the collar that's going to be dumped because the shoulder line is different. And you will all know everybody is asymmetrical. No two shoulders are the same. Every singer stands differently, and also when they're standing in a fitting room, it's not necessarily how they stand when they sing. So they can be just quite happily standing there, but actually when they sing, they're much more chest forward, more rolled in the shoulders. So there's all those little elements that you've got to take into account as well. And so very often the adjusting is all happening here through the shoulders. You'll see this shoulder line here, that's like a period shoulder line. This is the shoulder line up until about 1920s, and then it changed to over the top of the shoulder. So this creates a nice smooth line over men's shoulders, not a modern shoulder pad line. When the 20s came in, that was when they wanted to kick that out, and then where the shoulder seam sat changed. And those little elements I absolutely love finding out about period costume. Those little tweak details. We did a production of the Marriage of Figaro about 4 years ago with a costume historian, well, actually I should say a fashion historian, Jenny Tiramani, and she runs the School of Historical Dress in London. If you ever get to London, please just go in and have a look. They do classes, and she is the go-to for us on historical fashion. So she will find corset pieces that have been on statues in a church, or often buried in tombs, or there's a cultural to put old pieces of clothing and you bury it in your wall when you plaster up the wall to ward off evil spirits. People renovate their houses, they pull down the wall and they find a piece of clothing hidden behind the wall. And so she researches what were the fibres, what kind of boning did they use, which way did they stitch the seam, which direction was the fabric, why is there a patch here? And that kind of detail, she'll x-ray it and look where there's metal boning and where there's whale boning and all of those little tiny details to create patterns that are historically accurate. And from that, we did a production of the Marriage of Figaro where we went right down to that really nitty-gritty point. We didn't hand sew it because we're not insane, but we did discover things like, because the armholes were so tiny, we actually couldn't get them in under the sewing machine to a certain point. We could only stitch from like the front seam over the shoulder, but underneath we actually had to do it by hand because it was so tiny, but that's what they would have done. So it was really interesting to see the tricks that they use that we could then utilise as costume people, because often you're trying to work out how you can make something work, without faking it. And yeah, that's an absolute, probably one of my favourite productions to ever worked on. The other detail in that production was that the entire colour of the palette was blue. So all the servants were blue, and the reason for that is that blue was the most common dye that you could get at the time. It was called Rogue, and that's now what we use as denim today. Still the most common dye that we use. And so anyone in the lower classes of the household, and Figaro was all about servants and lords, were in pale blue, and then as you got darker clothing, further up the ranks you were, and so Figaro, who was a high servant, was in dark blue. And just those little details about telling a story on stage through costume, which was absolute joy for us because we got to shine at the front in that particular production. Yeah, it was just, if you do ever get to London, please check out the School of Historical Dress. She's absolutely mad and passionate, and that's such a joy to be around. Back to Musetta. All right, so this was a production that we did in 2010. We do Bohem every year now. This production has been so successful, and it opens our New Year's Eve. Bohem, if you know the story, it's set on Christmas Eve. Two people fall in love, there's a fabulous party scene, and then she dies. But it's still a great hour, and it's a good night in the theatre. So this is Musetta's costume. So Musetta, as a rival, the first time we see her on stage is in Act 2, and the show stops when she walks in, and she actually sings about everybody is staring at me, look how fabulous I am. And so you can't look out in tracksuit. So we created this dress for her. Julie Lynch was the designer, and you can see here Taryn Phoebe, who was our first Musetta. We've had maybe 10 now, I'd say. So this is the original dress that we created. This is not the original dress, this is one of our copies, but you can see we give the same dress to Musetta each time. It started out as a black fabric, a silver fabric, and gold fabric. So what we've done, all these panels here are alternated stitching. So you've got black, silver, black, silver. You've got gold, black, gold, black, gold, black. So those panels were created to achieve this starburst effect. The panels through here, the skirt, flatness skirt, I guess you'd call it, is on a separate panel so that it moves differently. She has a scene where her shoe is hurting and she has to get her leg up in the air and scream because her shoe hurts, and that's how she gets rid of her old boyfriend. You must go and see her in this, it's really great, it's really fun. But these panels were sent to India once we had chosen this fabric to be beaded to match the rest of the costume. So each panel is a separate thing. skirt. They're also the kind of thing that we can take off and put on another costume that overlaps, so you can stretch them out, shrink them up into something smaller. The jewellery is made up of, this is a necklace, okay? We got it on stage, you couldn't see it. So we backed it onto black fabric because against all of this, it just wasn't working. And so you can make the choices in that moment. This is what I want to, do, and when you get it on stage, it may not have worked. You can see on this girl here, so the hours we spent labouring over this. We got all of it on stage. There's a little design here on the side, which was really distracting when you got it on stage. So we just had to paint it out with black paint. You get all of this work on here, and in the end you just need to tube with black paint to finish it off. And you've got to just suck up and do it because that's what's needed at the time. Quite often we're breaking down costumes, and that's giving it an ageing process. I actually really enjoy that part of it because it gives the costume an extra life, or it tells more of the story, depending on what their character is, whether they're a peasant living in the street or they're just a worker needing the edge taken off the costume. There's different techniques that we'll employ, from dyeing, spraying, grating, bleach, anything that ages something up. We'll need to do often blood effects or wounds into a costume. Could be a stab, could be a bullet wound. Everyone has an opinion on how much blood comes out of a bullet wound. And I can tell you, no matter how much you put on it, it's always more when you get to the stage. It's always more blood. I think, Quentin Tarantino's responsible for a lot of how much blood we accept these days. All right, we might start talking about her. So the director wanted the costume to peel off her bit by bit on stage. During her aria, it was quite a difficult aria. Actually, when the soprano arrived, we fitted her in Melbourne. We flew down, we had to wait for an hour and a half while she sang all of her music to the conductor before he would sign off that she could do the production. So we're literally there with costume, ready to go, like, come on, we've got to get this thing made. And he wanted to know that she was able to sing it because it is so difficult. Plus she has to take a swimming costume on stage. So we had a team of chorus ladies who were choreographed to take each bit off just as she was either taking a breath, pausing, or hitting a low note where she wasn't having to exert herself. So the whole removal of this costume on stage was highly choreographed, and the director didn't have time to rehearse it, so we got to the stage and he hadn't choreographed it. And so we had all of like 20 minutes to figure it out, and it was very, very stressful. And the soprano was incredibly polite about it, and we managed it. So we start taking it off. The first element that came off was the ruff. So that just unties it back, and off that comes. So you can see she's starting to be exposed. The next bit that comes off is the sleeves. And you just want to start untying the sleeves. So there is nothing more nerve-wracking as a costume person than watching someone untie a bow on stage. You know that it cannot, and there is nothing you can do if it not. So they had to carry scissors on with them as well, because you know what it's like in doing your shoe. If you just pull the wrong cord, you're stuck. I'll tell you, we had another production of Salome where the dance of the Seven Veils, and so she has 7 different costumes that she wears within that, and the final costume, so nerve-wracking watching while they're doing quick changes backstage. You just don't know if they're going to come on or not. And she had one costume that was called the Dancer, and it was like a blue sequin dance ball gown, big fur, feather trim at the hem, and what the director wanted was it to unravel from the top, unwind, like a present, like a gift that was being given to Herod. And of course, when you start unraveling something from the top, there's nothing holding it up, so it starts to fall down. So not only did we have to get her into this costume in about 45 seconds, but also have it stay up on her and then unravel right down. So it's like, 4 meters of a costume being wrapped up on her in 45 seconds, not possible. So we had to have all these special devices where you could we had a zip that went a certain section to do it up, and then another zip. So it was all set to go, and they just zipped her sections up, the final bit wrapped around and went onto her shoulder. And you can do all this work. We have magnets that undid it all, that's how it unlocked, so you didn't hear Velcro or poppers. person giving the secrets away. And Herod was so nervous about not getting it wrong, I guess, that he was really tentative on putting on the costume. He didn't want to damage it. But of course, unless there's the tension on it, nothing's going to come off. So it was just, you can do all this work and then it's just one person at the end that's still going to carry it off on stage. And look, in the end, we did it and she made all the quick changes every night and we all had a sigh of relief. Back to Leonora. Okay, so the next bit that comes off is the bodice. So there's literally 3 hooks on the back and a couple of poppers. Squishy bodies are easy to get costumes off than actress forms. They're much more obliging. So that's the next bit that comes off. And Leonora's left. We're starting to see her in her underwear. She sings a bit more of her aria. She sings about how she's in love. The next element to come off is this peplum or top skirt. So that comes off. And here's where you can see that scene that I was talking about before. We're going to put all that vulnerability through. While that's coming off, you've got 3 of the chorus ladies down the front. Again, very nerve-wracking. I'm doing those on stage. And I think actually what they ended up doing, it's something like even they did it from the ground up because she didn't want the ribbons hanging over the next one down. So all those little things just to make sure that she gets undressed properly on stage. And you see we've got a big tab there. That's so you've got something to grab. We leave petticoat waistbands going longer so that you can handle it. It's going to be hidden underneath. So now we're down to her base petticoat. It's quite a padded, chunky petticoat, and that's because we want to cover up or disguise the rungs of the pannier that's underneath. Any crinoline, pannier, bustle is going to need some kind of petticoat over the top to soften those lines. Alright,
what's that fabric made of?
This is just so it started out as just a white cotton, actually, just a, we brought in cotton wool and then we've dipped it, dyed it the colour we wanted. We also got it on stage, and of course it was all this detail in the gathering and the tucks here, couldn't see it. It was all just too white. So we had to go in with spray and break it down so we could actually see the detail that we were looking at. So even though to you and I up close it's looking grubby, on stage it was just shadow. No, we send it our dry cleaning out. We do have a laundry where we do any washing, and washing gets products and smell out much better than dry cleaning. And the other issue too with dry cleaning, it does get some of it out, but put it then back on a hot body and it heats again. And we're putting clothes onto different people, so even though it's clean, there can often be a lingering smell, particularly in very old costumes. And often you have to just cut the armpit out and replace it. Alright, so the other thing that the designer wanted in this costume was a particularly light and delicate pannier, which was not going to hold up all of this skirt. I mean, we were just like, really? Really? It's going to be made out of lace? Really? It's overlaid with lace. But what we've got in underneath is a heavy, you might be able to see it a little bit, you might catch the light a little bit. It's an industrial air conditioning filter fabric. Yeah. Traditionally used in all fillers. We use this a lot for creating like stiff bulk. It's not very nice to be worn next to the skin because it's like a hard plastic and the filaments kind of stick out. However, on something like this, it's perfect because it's really stiff, transparent fabric, filter fabric, that we can create these, magical shapes with. We've got some boning through the edge, and that's metal boning. You'll see that it's curved a little bit in the front. That's just the weight of the costume. There was only so much you can do. And particularly as it's got to come off on stage, you can't then be putting a pad under here to kick it out. So if we were doing something that wasn't going to be seen, there's other elements that we could do, but on this we had to just suck it up and pretend we weren't looking at the dip in the front that every costume person was looking at and probably no one in the audience. The other thing is it comes off sideways, it comes off on the side. So if leathers start to come off, you'll see I've got some hooks and bars on there. That's to take the weight of the costume. So it's all very well to have it heavy, but you've got to take the weight right through the body. So if you can take some of the weight on the corset, it's going to be a lot more comfortable for the artist. So that's what that device is there. And also it meant, in case these came unhooked, you've not dropped a penny halfway through. It happens. Often like a safety tie, just to reinforce in case the bars break. They can break. So the quality of heavy is not what it used to be, and so often we'll put safety elements in there just to cover us. So no one like costume mishaps on stage. All right, so how do we get this? Of course.
Oh, it's fairly robust. Why don't we pass that round?
You'll see it's also sprayed dark on the inside because we weren't seeing the lace. It wasn't reading. So again, this beautiful, delicate piece then just went into the spray room, hand spray, to spray the backside of it. And you can feel the air conditioning fabric. I think there's probably only one layer in that one, but we'll often fold it and pleat it to create frills if we don't want to do a full pannier, or the frills on the back of a bustle, or if over the years a costume has started to collapse a little bit, we can kick it back up again. So it's a really handy fabric, but it's not cheap, so we can use it sparingly. It's really interesting. The really fine, delicate, invisible fabrics are the ones that are the most expensive. The ones you don't see are the ones that really test your budget. No, she stepped out of that one, but I can't get the dummy to stop. Oh, okay. No, so the reason that the split was on the both sides was so that if we only let it go at the back, it's actually quite a squeeze to get out of it, to get that circumference over the hips. So we put 2 fastenings on the side. It also meant when we were letting it out for the bigger soprano, and you can see actually in that pannier where the tucks are, that we're expanding it that way, not just at one point to throw off the whole balance of it. So that's the other issue, particularly with panniers. They actually only can be let out so much, so we had to think about how we could do that.
So did you say that you used fiberglass or metal for the...
We actually use both. Definitely that one. Fiberglass is a lot lighter, but fiberglass is great for circles, not so much for an oval shape. The metal you can manipulate a little bit. We'll use metal boning for stomachers. Although when we did Figurettes, that was that production with the costume historian, we had what looks like a 30cm school ruler. It was called it's a rod that literally went down the front of corsets, and they were often, what's it called? It's escaping me now. Yeah, and it's got a little hole with a tie at the top, so you tie it into and then called a love. Come to me, once I leave. And it was often given as a love token because it's worn close to the heart and quite long down the body. And so it was embroidered, or it would be engraved your lover's name or a message. And so we did use those on Figaro. But the thing about them is because they're removable, sopranos take them out and they don't take them. But that's the other thing. You've also got to remember people are singing and working in these. It's not a historical reenactment. All right, so how do we get this corset off quickly on stage? Because we've only got 5 seconds. How do we get her into it? How do we get it off quickly? So if you were here before, you would have seen me lacing up the front here. That's a wig technique. But we don't have time to do that on stage. But she's still got to be stripped right down to her chemise. So a trick that we use in the theatre, and we use this a lot for quick changes. You'll see we've got a cord running right through the back, like a ripcord. We either use a soft one, or it can be hard if it's on armour or something like that. So she's singing her note, and the chorus ladies are helping out. It works much better on a soft body, so it might look a little inelegant today. But that just gets pulled through. It works really well on soft bodies. So that comes off quickly. We're not wasting time whipping her, potentially whipping her in the face. When the cords come off, they're really hard. They're new. And then she was left in just the chemise. So she got that costume for the first.
That looks like she could run away with somebody. That doesn't.
Yeah, that's a long way not getting out of that costume. She then gets a travelling coat over this and spends the rest of the opera in mum's robes. So, she gets 10 minutes in that, and then she gets the rest of the show in that. Probably not. If you're working through night singing, you do want to be comfortable. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thanks for listening.